Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Islam, and I am the Executive Director of API Vote Michigan. And we are a nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing civic engagement amongst APIs here in Michigan. And we are here today to talk about ways we can address the hate and racist acts directed at APIs nationwide. As we all know, racist incidents were already skyrocketed during the pandemic. But just 4 weeks ago, 6 women of Asian descent in Metro Atlanta were victims of a mass shooting spree. And our community was devastated again last Thursday when 4 members of the Sikh community were victims of yet another shooting spree in Indianapolis, Indiana. And though our grief is palpable, we are here today to look forward with hope and a commitment to devising solutions to see how we can slow a national hatred that only appears to be gaining steam. And as many of us who do community work, we know that if we're to see real change and affect real change, we must do so in partnership with across the board with community members, community organizations, and government officials. And so I was just so thrilled when Senator Gary Peters and his staff reached out and expressed his desire to hear us and start a conversation about how we might partner and devise real solutions together. And we are honored to have a lineup of government officials who recognize that it is a dire situation and know that in only working with community, we can begin to make better change and make things better. So today we also have with us Representative Padma Kupa and Commissioner Mai Zhang. And at this time, I would like to ask Representative Kupa to give us just a brief remarks. And also following Representative Kupa, we'll have Commissioner Mai Zhang to just say a few words.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you to Gary Peters, our great senator from the state of Michigan, and his wonderful staff who have always sought to lift up the voices of those who often can be invisible, including myself. It's really an honor to be here to listen to so many community leaders and to be here alongside Mai and Roland, who has served as a mentor to me. And so I just want to say it's really important that once we're in positions of power, as I am as a representative for the 44th District representing Troy and Clawson, that I work with the leaders in the community and my constituents and make sure that they are heard. And so the feeling of otherization or otherness that we have as immigrants, as people who are not part of the broader community, I think we fix that actually by getting involved, by being present in various community and civic organizations. And that's something that I have sought to do from the time that I moved to Troy, whether it was the PTA or the civic organizations or the city itself as a planning commissioner. And I think that that's something that I want to ask others to do as well, to sort of normalize our selves as members of the community, as volunteering is the ultimate exercise in democracy.
Thank you, Rep. Kupa. Commissioner Mai Zhang, if you want to just say a few words.
Hi there. Thank you, Rebecca, API Vote Michigan, and Representative Padma Kupa. Hello, Senator Gary Peters. I believe this is our first time actually meeting. I'm on my way to pick up my kids, so I apologize. I'm going to pull over while I speak so I don't hurt anybody. All right, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mai Song, and I am a Macomb County Commissioner in District 2, serving East Warren and Center Line. I was recently elected in November. I had started campaigning in January and didn't even know that there was going to be a pandemic and a shutdown. And so that was very difficult campaigning, becoming an elected official and having more representation. That was really my goal. But I realized that, the pandemic has really highlighted so many issues in our communities, including anti-Asian hate and racism, which has always existed, but it's been much more amplified during the pandemic. And so as an Asian American woman, I'm only 4'11", and just the thought of walking down the street and knocking on the doors during campaigning, that was very scary and daunting. Thankfully, I didn't have to encounter anything violent or discriminatory, but I appreciate APIA Vote having this space for us to have these discussions. And thank you to Senator Peters and your team for reaching out to Asian American communities and organizations, because it's so important that we're just now having this conversation, but racism has existed for decades.
Thank you, and Commissioner Mahjong. At this time, I would like to, we all know Senator Gary Peters needs no introduction, but for everyone else who might not, I would just like to read a quick bio of the senator. Senator Gary Peters was first elected to serve the state of Michigan in the United States Senate in 2014 and was re-elected in 2020. Senator Peters serves as the chairman of Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, as well as serving the Senate Armed Services Committee and Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee. In the last session of Congress, Senator Peters was recognized as the #1 most effective U.S. Senator in the U.S. Senate, despite serving in the minority party of authoring and passing more substantive bills more than any other Democratic or Republican member in either Senate or the House. Prior to his election to the U.S. Senate, he served 3 terms in the U.S. House, 2 terms as the Michigan State Senator, and as Rochester Hills City Councilman. Senator Peters served as the U.S. Naval Reservist, rising to the rank of Lieutenant Commander. He completed his undergrad degree at Alma College, holds a law degree from Wayne State University, and a MBA from University of Detroit Mercy, MA in Political Science from Wayne State, and a MA in Philosophy from Michigan State University, and has a diploma from the College of Naval Command at the U.S. Naval War College. Senator Peters grew up in Rochester. His father, Herb, served in the World War II and spent his career as a teacher. His mother, Madeleine, is an immigrant who survived Nazi occupation in France and worked as a nursing aide. Senator Peters lives in Bloomfield Hills with his wife, Colleen, and is a proud father of 3 children, Gary Jr., Madeleine, and Elena. Senator Peters and his staff reached out to APIA Vote Michigan to host this community conversation to hear from the community leaders as we are facing serious challenges during this unprecedented time. Thank you, Senator, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Thank you for the warm introduction, and thanks to everybody joining this conversation. And APIA Vote, thank you for your involvement in all of this and the work that you do each and every day. I thought it's important to make sure that we're having this conversation, given what we are seeing, and we've been seeing it for some time, as May mentioned and Padma both mentioned. This is nothing new, but it's the intensity of what we're seeing in terms of hate and discrimination that is out there for folks from Asian descent. That's got to stop. We've got to condemn it in no uncertain terms and lean in heavily to it. But I wanted to get a sense of what's been happening in Michigan, what you've been seeing, what you've been hearing, kind of your thoughts of how we deal with it as well. As Padma mentioned, I serve as the chair now of Senate Homeland Security Committee. And we know that the #1 terrorist threat that we have in this country now is not foreign terrorism, something we always have to be surely conscious of, but it's domestic terrorism. And it's domestic terrorism and violent extremist groups that have arisen and are gaining strength, gaining momentum. Many of these groups are driven by the insidious ideology of white supremacy. And there are anti-governments, others. We saw the insurrection on the Capitol. This is just an incredibly challenging time for our country. And we have to come together. We have to lock arms and come together and stand up for the values that have always made this country great. Values such as the power of immigration and the power of inclusion and the power of treating everybody with dignity and respect that is here. That's why I've worked recently in co-sponsoring legislation put forward by Senator Mazie Hirono and Tammy Duckworth dealing with hate crimes to elevate our ability to deal with hate crimes generally. The one thing that is really quite disturbing, and this has been going on, we're going to be able to change it, is that even though we know domestic terrorism and hate crimes is a continuing problem and one that's actually accelerating in both the number and in the intensity of it, there lacks a federal clearinghouse within the Homeland Security to actually track this. It makes no sense. You know, I pounded the table for a number of years with the Trump administration. When I was ranking member of the committee, they basically dragged their feet, didn't provide that. They had some hollow rhetoric that they put forward, but did not have the kind of concerted effort necessary for us to protect everybody, no matter who you are, no matter where you live, no matter what your descent may be as an American, to be protected in this country. That will change now in the Biden administration. I've had long talks about this with Secretary Mayorkas, who's now the Secretary of Homeland Security, as to how do we have a better sense of what's happening, how do we track it, particularly when it rises to the level of violence. Now, clearly, there's underlying discrimination and hate that we have to deal with in a broad way in terms of public opinion and reaching out and making sure that we're condemning it. Then there's the other level of the actual coordinated activities that we see as well. So it has to be multifaceted. The position in the Senate that I have as chair now of the committee allows me to focus on that second aspect of it related to some of these coordinated violent attacks or the kinds of groups that basically arise, talk about violence, but also incite the kind of hatred that can spill outside of the group to society at large as well. So I'm committed to working on this. I'm committed to working on it with each and every one of you. I look forward to our partnership together. And that means we need to be communicating on a regular basis. I know this is the start of a little more formal communication. I want to continue that. And I know I'm sure all of you want to continue that as well. And give me those assessments. And it's with that spirit that I wanted to come before you here today and hear what's on your mind and seek your suggestions as to what we need to do. So with that, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you, sir. We are truly grateful for this opportunity and to have this conversation with you. At this time, I am going to hand it over to the committee members to start this conversation. We received several questions from committee members. And we will hear from a few of the key members here who will ask the questions on behalf of the community. First, we have David Hahn. David Hahn, if you'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, can you hear me, Rebecca?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you so much, Rebecca, APIA Vote, for organizing this opportunity to meet and speak with Senator Peters. It's a great honor and so wonderful to have your support and leadership. I'm David Hahn. In private sector, I'm a tech commercialization professional working in robotic perception for autonomous vehicles and smart infrastructure based here in Ann Arbor. I bring international technologies to the United States. And also from a public service point of view, I'm a commissioner on the MAPAC Commission as well. So Americans like myself and many that came before me of Asian descent are very grateful. And we love America. We love that we are Americans. This is our home. However, also Americans like ourselves and others have experienced racism, discrimination, both personal and institutional, verbal and physical violence throughout our nation's history. During the 19th century, the Chinese exclusion, 20th century, Japanese internment during World War II, and more recently, in closer to home, Vincent Chin murder during the auto industry troubles in the 1980s, during which I was here in Michigan. And now in the 21st century, really exacerbated with the current environment, with the pandemic, and also a rising economic and political China on the global landscape. So as we navigate all of this, what we're facing in the broader global context and what's going on in the United States, I'm very grateful that state of Michigan officials are really working very closely with the APA community. And now through you, Senator Peters, that very interested in at the federal level what we can do and what's being done so that at the national level, not only can we deal with the mitigating and containing the hate and violence towards Asian Americans, but how can we ensure that for our children and their children, that we could proactively foster a environment and culture in America where Asians, Americans of Asian descent, and multi-generational Asians can truly become accepted and recognized as fellow Americans and not perpetual outsiders. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, David, for the questions, and thank you for your work in autonomous vehicles. That's something that I'm very passionate about with the auto industry and kind of the future of mobility. And one of my main concerns is that we continue to be the world leader in auto technology and especially in automation. And that's going to happen here because of your work, David, and a lot of amazing engineers and researchers here in Southeast Michigan. We're going to make sure Michigan continues to be at the forefront, and your contributions are invaluable. So thank you for that. The question you raise is incredibly important because it does add to the complexity of how we deal with this issue. You mentioned the rise of China in terms of both economic and political potential conflict with the government of China. And that's the thing, as we talk about this issue, we always have to make sure we're talking about the Chinese government, not folks who may be citizens here living here, but it's a government issue. But I think we know, and this is from my work on the Armed Services Committee and work on the Commerce Committee, we know there's likely to be heightened tensions in the years ahead. There's clearly a competition between where the Chinese government is and where the U.S. government is on a variety of issues. We've all heard the president talk about the conflict between authoritarianism and democratic republics like we are. And China, clearly, the Chinese government clearly is on the authoritarian side. So it's one we have to keep an eye on, but it's just incumbent for those of us, especially in elected office, to always be clear when we're talking about the Chinese government, we're talking about the government. We're not talking about American citizens or those who are here legally from Asian countries. It's completely separated. And I think an important part to deal with that too is the other thing that is so troubling for me, and Rebecca mentioned my mother's a naturalized citizen herself, is the rhetoric we have certainly out of our former president and out of the Republicans of anti-immigration generally, and folks who fail to realize that immigration has always made this country great. That's what the fact that we were the place where you came, David, and folks on this call, either themselves or their families, came from other countries to live their version of the American dream, however they conceptualized it when they came to this country. And we are all the beneficiaries of those who came before us and stand on their shoulders or have come here recently. And then so that we have to continue to be a welcoming country. In fact, immigration is absolutely vital for the United States to continue to be an economic force in the world. And the good news is a lot of folks do want to come here because it's a great place to live. It's why you love it, David, why we all love it. And everybody on the call loves this country. But I think it's important for us to also change the dialogue on immigration generally and to celebrate the diversity that we have in this country. That diversity is what has always made our country great and will continue to make our country great. But that's incumbent on us as elected officials, but all of us in this group and talking to our neighbors and friends to change that dialogue out there as well. And to push back when we do see any kinds of acts of violence or of hatred expression as well, that's never acceptable speech. Hatred and violence is never accepted. And to make sure we treat that with the seriousness that it deserves. And that's why we call it out when we see it and continue to identify those instances where it exists. This is, as was mentioned, and Mai mentioned, and Padma mentioned, these have been issues, Rebecca, these have been issues that we've had to deal with for years. But because of the heightened tension that we may see with the government of China, we're going to be challenged to lean in the most aggressive way that we've ever had to deal with this in the past, where we're going to go down a very dangerous, slippery slope that I fear, and I know everyone here on the call, you have to live with it, and you fear it as well and live with it, and that's simply unacceptable. And we're going to get through this, but we're going to have a lot of work ahead of us.
Thank you, Senator. We're counting on you for your strong leadership in Washington to set the right tone at the federal level, because it all impacts all of us. The role models that you can become really influence all of us. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
For your question and your response, Senator. At this time, I am going to ask Dr. Sue, a Thai community leader, to come forward and ask her question.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Senator Peters, for this opportunity. My name is Sue McKeithen Polish, or Sujirapon, but it's long, so I shortened to Sue for everybody to know that, that's a Thai name, it's a long name. My official job is actually working for Macomb Intermediate School District as the bilingual education program / Title III consultant. But my passion is working with communities. So I'm also a MAPAC commissioner and one of the Thai community leaders as well. And so my question to you, Senator Peter, has to do with our Southeast Asian communities. So our Southeast Asian communities like Thai, Lao, and Cambodian in Michigan are often not outspoken. Whether we get discriminated, whatever incident happened, we tend to try to take care of it ourselves. And the reason is that they have very little trust in institutions and feel lost navigating through bureaucracy. So what can you do as a senator to help them and gain their trust so they feel that their voices are heard?
Well, thank you, Sue. That's an incredibly important issue, and we want to make sure that they know their voices are heard and their communities recognized. But I understand the issue of trust, and I also understand that trust is not something that can be that is given freely. Trust is something that has to be earned, and it has to be earned over a period of time. And that's going to, again, be incumbent on us to be available to the communities, to be out there. So I would encourage you, Sue, if there's ways that I can be out there to talk, have the kinds of meetings that we're having here today, so that folks know that they are first to listen to, and then we have to take action so then people know that they were heard. It's that two-step process. First, open up the dialogue like we're doing right now. And then taking the action to deal with this issue, and kind of the issues that I mentioned with David's question in terms of dealing with the extreme violent groups, as well as the general sense of how we have to push back against hatred generally as well among the community at large. And understand that we will lean in and appreciate the contributions that everybody makes to this country, the rich diversity of it. But it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. I'm willing to do that. I know many of my colleagues here with me are willing to do that. And that outreach is important, but it's difficult for me to do without your help. So let's continue to work together to make sure that I'm connecting with the folks initially who are community leaders who will speak to other members of the community, because those community leaders have earned that trust. And we've got to now earn the trust of those community leaders, so that they feel comfortable expressing that to folks more broadly, and I'm happy to do that.
Thank you very much. That is so wonderful to hear that you're willing to come out and be part of our communities, and I think they need to see that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And with the power of Zoom, I can cover a lot more people all over the place. Although I'd rather see people, let me be clear, I'd rather see people face to face, and we will get to that. But if we're trying to do broad outreach, this is a great tool to try to be broader as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. Next, we'd like to call Dr. Su Yan to come on. Okay, you're unmuted now.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Senator. And it's so good to see you again. And my name is Su-Wing Wu. I'm from Center for Health Disparity Innovation and Studies at EMU, and also the professor of School of Nursing. And I served 2 times as an APAC commissioner and now retired. And I'm still, working with the different community leaders. And here in our center, we have received several CDC funded initiatives, including the REACH, that where we kind of watch out for our priority populations of Asian Americans in terms of chronic disease. And then recently, CDC also provided supplement funding to have our work in our APA communities for vaccine, the COVID vaccination. And so far, we have done quite a few mobile clinics working with the leaders such as Dr. Su in the Southeast communities, the Korean community, and others. But today, I'm coming in a kind of different perspective, because our center also did a Asian racism study, and we have the study using the national sample as well as Michigan. And I think, this is helpful during this time because the results we got from the national sample as well as here in Michigan were both from Asians and non-Asians, is that the individual experience, and in these studies showing the higher racism in terms of how they were treated before the COVID as well, compared to during the COVID, that they compare these 2 incidences, and then they report higher racism in terms of how they portray, especially Asian portray in social media, the YouTube, and also by some public officials, prominent figures. And in return, they actually, reported they do something like, they worry about their being teased, harassed, and or attacked because of the Asian race and ethnicity. And they become very careful about what they talk and what they look, and they even avoid to going to different places they don't feel safe. So responding to these recent surge of anti-Asian hate crimes and incidents in the nation, we know that our APA communities already sponsored several webinars and met with the AG, and in Michigan, the representative in FBI, focusing on reporting when the incident happens. So the question is that, is there anything that you could advise that can be done to proactively before these incidents, that in the legislature as well as in the community level?
Related, thank you, Dr. Wu. You mean related to reporting of issues of bias?
Reporting when the incident happens has been the focus on the recent meetings webinar when we meet with the different representatives, such as, Representative Kuba, and we also meet with the representative from FBI and AG. So this is when the accident actually happened, then report. So the question is that how, what's your advice about what can be done, proactively before, prevent these happening in the legislature as well as in the community level?
Well, yes, thank you. There needs to be that mechanism. I mentioned in my opening comments on how there is not the kind of information that I would expect that we would have related to violent extremist groups in relation to when attacks occur. But clearly, to your point, we have to be engaged prior to the actually spilling over to outright violence to get an understanding of what's happening in communities and the sediments for that. That's exactly the type of thing that I'm asking from the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. You mentioned the FBI, where you can go after an incident and talk about a hate crime that was reported there, but they need to be engaged earlier than that. I agree totally with you that has to happen. Right now, I'm still waiting for information. This is months into it now from the FBI as to where their statistics are. That's simply unacceptable. We're going to press that aggressively. And we're going to progressively look as to how we can get that information earlier, because ultimately, too, I mean, when you're dealing with incidents, usually the front line on any of those incidents are not going to be the FBI or the Department of Homeland Security. It will be local law enforcement that will be the first responders. So how do we share that information? Sometimes that information's not even shared the way it should, and that has to happen. But you have to have the information first, and then you have to be able to share it. And then you have to make sure you're holding those entities who get that information accountable to the fact that they're actually acting on it. So that's the process that I'm gonna be working on to do exactly that, and understand that after the fact is okay, but it's less than ideal. You want to be involved before the fact and try to identify where problems are going to exist before it. So you raise an important issue. That's a work in progress. And I would say continue to work with my office when it comes to all of you, of what you're hearing, of what's happening, where you find that there are impediments to that happening, or you're not being treated the way you should. And then we can then take it from there.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Thank you.
We are already running short on time, so we appreciate you giving us a few more minutes. Roland Wong did have a question for you. Roland, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Yep. Thank you. Yeah, I am a lecturer in APIA Studies, Asia Pacific American Studies at University of Michigan, current president of American Citizens for Justice, the civil rights group, and advisor to APIA Vote. My concern is with respect to all these cases, they are teaching moments. Back in the time of the Vincent Chin case, we looked at whether or not 18 U.S. Code 242 applied to an immigrant, Vincent Chin, and it turned out, yes, that was a definitive moment. Right now, with some of the law enforcement agencies being dismissive about whether or not these hate crimes are in fact racially motivated, is really painful, because they have not been able to adopt the mindset of the target community. The fact that Michael Wade can go to a Sikh temple and kill 6 Sikhs in Oak Creek is painful. And, the mindset of the target community has to be taken into account. When Robert Aaron Long goes to different massage parlors, predominantly targeting Asian Americans, and he denies the racial motive, the target community has to be in the equation. This is part of our mission in talking to the FBI and the Department of Justice, and it really requires a conversion. The problem with the statutes is that it almost essentially requires something to be said of a racist nature, as opposed to adopting the mindset of the target community. There is fear in the Asian American community because of all of these crimes in places where a lot of Asian Americans work and worship. And so I urge that there be a change in the mindset in terms of the way that the statutes operate. They have to protect the target communities. I understand the model legislation was pushed by the NAACP and the ADL. And so specific examples include burning a cross on a Black person's lawn, or scrawling a Nazi, symbol on a synagogue. Well, going to places of worship of Asian Americans and going, to places where they populate, the workforce, has to be part of that, because we are definitely a target community. Doing something damaging, Asian Americans, persons and property, and not having those perpetrators held accountable is really painful. And I think it's an invitation for you and other people to address that issue in legislation. It has to be broadened so that people who do things in silence against the target community can't get away with it. So thank you very much. I'm wondering if there's anything that can be done to open up the legislation so that can be, adopted.
Well, Roland, I take I agree totally with your sentiments, and we do need to take a look at that. I'm happy to work with you and to the APIA about that as we look at that legislation. So that's going to be a work in progress, something that we have to address. It's complex, clearly, but it's something we have to do. So I look forward to working with you. And I'm sorry, I do have to jump off as I continue to zoom around Michigan, but you can count on me doing that with you, Roland. And Rebecca, again, thank you for hosting this, and thank you for beginning this dialogue. This is not one and done. I look forward to continuing this discussion in the months ahead.
Thank you, Senator. We appreciate you for taking this time to come on. And also, we received several questions in the chat, and we will work with the Senator's office to get some of those answered. And we will share out information on how you can contact the Senator's office as well. So thank you so much. I won't keep you any longer.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Good afternoon. Take care.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you again, everyone else, committee leaders, for joining. I know the Senator had to jump off. Again, all the questions that we received, we will work with the Senator's office to get those answered, and we will send it out to everyone who registered for the webinar today, as well as, I think Kevin is still on. Kevin from the Senator's office, are you still on?